January. Just to remind everybody that the proceedings of this meeting are being broadcast live on YouTube, and you can find details that are included on page 1 of the 238 pages of this report as well. So welcome to you all. The first item of business is apologies. I do not think I have any apologies for the meeting. Is that correct, Joanna? That's correct, I think. Okay, item 2 then. The minutes of the meeting on the 15th of December, are they a true and accurate record of our meeting? Could you please signify your agreement? They are or are not, as the case may be. So I've seen indications that they are true and accurate record. I see no dissent from anyone or any questions about the accuracy of those minutes. So therefore, I think they are accurate representation of our meeting. Item 3 is questions from members of the public. We have one member of the public who wished to ask a question of Councillor Gooding. My understanding, Councillor Gooding, you have the question, and therefore you will read the question out and also provide the answer, is what I've understood. I have not seen that we have a member of the public with us on this meeting. I'll then go to Joanna, who confirms there is no member of the public. They have a requirement that their question is raised here. So, Councillor Gooding, you're on mute. Would you like to unmute and would you like to state the question and then your answer, please?
Well, I wonder, would it be more appropriate to read the question in advance of the item itself in the agenda, because I think it's pertinent to a number of issues, and it could be that it may answer some other questions in relation to that. So I would make that suggestion if that's applicable, because
well, I see no harm under item 3 of the agenda. It requires any questions from the member of public. In this instance, the member of the public is not present, but asked that it's read out. Under normal circumstances, I would read out that question and then ask you to respond to that. As you've already had sight of the question, I think it's appropriate that you read out the question and then you may defer your answer until you come to the item that you think is appropriate. So could you do that for me?
Yes, certainly. The question is, we are sure that members will appreciate that bus and coach operators across the country have been subject to a huge downturn in income since March 2020. Many companies have already ceased trading, and the majority that are still trading are still under severe pressure to stay solvent. The members of CPT Essex would implore you to consider extending all existing home to school transport contracts for another year, irrespective of their term length. This would give stability during the rest of the pandemic and ensure, sorry, my screen is playing it, and ensure continuity of revenue for a further 12 months. And that's from Nicola Granger, representing CPT. And if I could, I'd like to answer that question within the body of my report for the item as it comes forward, because I think it is relevant to a number of the issues within that.
And indeed, Councillor Gooding, I'm happy with your proposal on that, and therefore you can answer the question when you come to your item of business as well. So thank you for that. That's very helpful. Then we move to the next item of business, which is the Bewley Park Railway Station. Are there any questions from members of the public? I have Councillor Pond, and then I have anyone else. I only see Councillor Pond at the moment. Is that correct? It is. So, Councillor,
I believe, Leader, that Mike McCrory has his hand up as well.
In that case, I have Councillor McCrory as well as yourself, Councillor Pond.
Thank you. I welcome the initiative for the construction of the Bewley Park station, because, of course, we must do all we can to attract a modal shift, and I think the Bewley Park station will, in fact, do that. I've got about 4 questions, and I appreciate that I haven't been in at the genesis of this project, so they may be a bit naive, but I hope the portfolio holder will know the answers. First of all, can we be confident that the construction of a railway station between Chelmsford and Hatfield Peveril will not cause delays to the Great Eastern Main Line services? As it is, I think they are difficult to fit into the pattern of service. Will the station be, do we know what the pattern of service is likely to be? Will it be the same, let us say, as Hatfield Peveril, or the same as Kelvedon, or whatever? Will the station be designed with 4 platforms or 2 platforms? And if the latter, will they be off a loop such that delays to following Great Eastern Main Line services will be obviated? And perhaps the portfolio holder could tell me whether as much as possible is being made of the opportunity for a bus rail interchange and to base connecting services by bus out into the hinterland of the station. Thank you, Leader.
Well, thank you for your questions, Councillor Pond. My answers to your questions, because this paper is in my name, at the moment, as you will read in the report, we're actually at the early stages of validation of the project. So many of the questions that you ask are of detail once we have agreed the way forward in terms of the GRIP 4 proposal and analysis, which, as you are aware, is a value engineering project. Many of the considerations in that review by Network Rail, and indeed ourselves, will determine the outcomes, I believe, that you've already just discussed with us and asked questions of us. However, as we move forward with the project, we will very clearly be mindful of your questions. And as we get to greater certainty on the project, we will be able to provide you at that time with more specific answers on that particular points that you've raised with us. I hope that's helpful. It's intended to be helpful. So moving on to, that's okay. Councillor McCrory, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As someone who represents the area who's been waiting for this station for 40 plus years or more, I find some of the language used in the report quite alarming, particularly in paragraph 3.9, where it's talking about the significant risks and so on, and the implications of this not going ahead for the North East bypass, which is something else which we've been waiting for many, many years. So my questions, firstly, the GRIPS 3 project design, how could that have come in over budget by £14 million? Surely there were some cost limits that they should have been working to. So I'm really alarmed at the impact that would have if that funding gap can't be bridged, as it says in the report in 3.9, that it puts the whole project in jeopardy. So was it Network Rail who came up with the design, and or was it some other partner? I'd be very interested to know. And I understand about the possibilities of reducing the multi-storey car park and so on, which may be quite relevant in today's climate. But I'm really concerned about the language that's used in this report and the very high risks that still seem to be associated before we get to the next stage.
Well, thank you, Councillor McCrory, for your question. I think it would be disingenuous of us to pretend that this project is an easy project, and the very reason that the paper expresses those concerns that you have articulated so clearly is that we as an authority are not prepared to accept the HIF money or indeed the recommendations by Network Rail as to what the outline proposal should be and the consequences of that proposal if it engaged Essex County Council in an ongoing, unsubstantiated budget pressure. And the whole purpose of the GRIP 4 is to find ways in which we can value engineer the project with Network Rail so that we actually reduce the totality of the cost by that £14 million in order that we can proceed. And I am confident in the expertise of our officers that we will be able to, working with Network Rail, we will be able to bring about the satisfactory conclusion. But I would not want us to be putting forward a proposal that seemed like it was all honey and roses, when the reality is there is a lot of work to be done, a lot of analysis to be done, and a lot of financial analysis and detail to be done around the operation of this extension and the station itself. And so I actually applaud the officers for their openness and their transparency in this matter as well. But thank you for your question. I do understand the basis of the question and I accept the point that you're making. However, we need to be open and transparent with the public about this, and particularly the public of Chelmsford as well. But thank you for the question. There are no other questions I note from anybody in the room, and therefore I will move the recommendations which are in the paper on page 13. They are recommendations 2.1 through to 2.2.2. Those recommendations I move and recommend to the Cabinet. Are they approved? Can I see a show of hands, please, in approval? I see a majority in favour. Therefore, those recommendations are accepted by the Council, by the Cabinet, sorry. And now I move on to the next item of business, which will be the item which is the items on page 4, again 5, I think you'll find, is the Fair Glen interchange. This is a paper that Councillor Bentley will deal with. But before we actually get to Councillor Bentley's presentation, could I just ask, are there any questions for Councillor Bentley? I see no indication of questions. I see no indication. So therefore, Councillor Bentley, to you, if you want to be brief, you may do so.
Well, Chairman, I suspect there are no questions because this is a technical paper that actually is just giving us a bit of elbow room if we need it. And it's not a dissimilar paper for those who remember on junction 7A on the M11, when we're just giving ourselves the ability to do any compulsory purchase if we were required to do so. Negotiations going around land around the A127. It's a very important junction that needs an upgrade. And those negotiations are good. However, if we need the ability to go to a compulsory purchase order, then we need to put through the proper legislation to make sure that happens. So therefore, I present this paper in that spirit and put the recommendations from 2.1 to 2.3 to Cabinet for approval.
Okay, so it's 2.1, 2.2.
The Cabinet members, the recommendation has been moved by the Cabinet member. They are, as he stated, 2.1 to 2.3. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. I see a majority in favour, therefore that is moved and accepted. And thank you for that, Councillor Bentley. That must have been the briefest of papers that you've ever brought to a Cabinet meeting, or to a Cabinet meeting. So we now move on to item 6. And item 6 is in 2 parts. And I recognise that there may well be many questions that need or want to be asked. But the process that I would like to put forward and accept is, first of all, to get a list of any questions that relate to 6A and indeed 6B. And then I would ask under 6B, Councillor Whitbread to present the finances and the proposals of finances to you. And then similarly for Councillor Madden, should there be questions, to also move and speak to the paper on the organisational plan as well. So let me just first of all ask, are there any questions about the papers under 6A and 6B? So first of all, I have Councillor Henderson. And I have Mike McCrory.
Thank you, Leader. I've got 3 or 4 questions actually on this. My first question is, can I ask why should any resident trust and administration that has increased their council tax year on year over the last 5 years during 10 painful years of austerity and on a year of an election propose a 0 increase? That's my first question. Do you want me to carry on?
Yes, you can do. I think that, I'd give you an answer off the cuff, but let's let Councillor.
Thank you. My next question is, it's section 9, page 104 on capital programme and treasury management. And it says within the budget proposals, council's aspiration is to invest considerable sums through the capital programme over the next 4 years. Of course, we welcome that investment and applaud it. But it also goes on to say it includes schemes to help deliver revenue savings, such as the Essex Housing Programme to redevelop redundant council property. Can I ask, is it the case that the council must borrow to pay for the list of schemes in section 9? Will he confirm it will incur borrowing costs which must be funded from the revenue budget? Will he further confirm that the cost of borrowing is 56 million per annum at present, rising to 82 million around 2024-25? And further to that, 9.2 on page 104, the report makes reference to the delivery of the future capital programme aspiration is dependent on achievements of savings and generation of income to fund the revenue borrowing costs. 9.7, page 105, in long term it says, it will not be possible to sustain this level of capital investment without greater achievement of savings, generation of income and increased funding. My question is, if you don't achieve these one-off savings, if you don't achieve the projected income, and if you don't achieve the increased funding to service the debt and the borrowing costs, which the report says you have to by 100% because the funding gaps over the next years will increase, and we're looking at a funding gap of 2024-25 of 91 million. What is your plan B? Will there be more cuts in services? I believe you need to be open and transparent with Essex residents on the future planned service cuts. Otherwise, you don't deserve their trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I'll go to Councillor McCrory now.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm bound to say I don't actually recall seeing the words risk, unknown demand and uncertainty being used so frequently in a budget paper as this one. However, first question is around paragraph 6.3, when the £46 million of, we'll say, savings to balance the budget is mentioned there. It goes on to list several programmes which I'm taking to mean that those savings will come out of those programmes. So can we have some more clarity on what this means for the Meaningful Lives Matter programme, supporting adults with learning difficulties, and the Connect programme that will ensure the most appropriate support is offered to older people going into hospital? And the impact that this is going to have on our residents. So where can we see that detail, and when will we see that detail? Because if we're going to give a meaningful response to this budget, we need to know where this 46 million is coming from. Paragraph 7.1 is refers to a forecast reduction in the council tax collection rate, and it's forecast to be 0.7%, which I find quite surprising, and I'll be interested to know how that can be realistically forecast when we know the furlough scheme is coming to an end soon. We know there is rising unemployment, and the financial commentators are predicting a double-dip recession this year. So I'm really concerned that that 0.7% is a very low figure, and that I wouldn't be at all surprised if that is much higher as we go forward. And then in 8.2, I'd ask the cabinet member just how alarmed is he at the prospect of a £91 million budget deficit in 3 years' time, as it's referred to there with the diagram as well. And I've got part two. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCrory. I see no other person indicating they've got questions. So let me just go first of all. Your question, all the questions I believe were about section 6.
Leader, I
Yes.
have my hand up both
I beg-
virtually and physically, and I think Councillor Tyrrell has too.
Okay, Councillor Young, I apologise. I didn't
That's
see you
okay.
there. That's why I
And you-
checked. And Councillor, just one moment, Councillor Tyrrell as well. Thank you. So Councillor Young, your questions.
Leader, I know you wouldn't deliberately overlook me. Never would that be the case.
It would be a mistake
Happy
if I ever did.
Happy New Year to the
And you
cabinet.
too.
I've got 3 points I want to make.
Yes.
Um,
These are questions, though.
Yes, they are questions. Yes.
Okay.
So can the cabinet member responsible for resources comment on the rationale of not raising council tax apart from the social care precept? As Councillor McCrory has said, you know, where that we have a balanced budget this year, we have a dark days ahead of us, and we all know that if you raise council tax incrementally, which I think should have been done for many years in the past, that would have been in our base budget, and it would have given us more surety of facing the challenges we have during this terrible COVID year. The other question, the second question, is about lobbying of government. Our grants are, government grants are on a 12-month basis, which does lead to significant uncertainty. What we're doing about lobbying government to change that approach. And third and final question is about library services. So I can see the budget set out there on page, I think it's 175. That's a challenge all of itself. You know, this time when we're being dictated, I suppose, to be isolated for so long to keep us safe and to save the NHS, going forward, connecting communities will be absolutely key. And I wonder if there will be a different approach in terms of libraries going forward, because they are very much the hub of the community.
Right, thank you for your questions, Councillor Young. And indeed, I now move to Councillor Tyrrell, please.
Thank you. Going last, 3 or 4 of my points have already been raised about council tax and the 46 million. There's one that hasn't been raised that bothers me. It's a general reserve. I still feel, and I think I say this every year, that we haven't got enough in the general reserve. I know we've got lots and lots of other reserves, you know, for each particular subject, but we need a higher percentage in our general reserves, because something like COVID may happen again. I mean, we didn't have a COVID reserve before we had COVID, so it's always best to be safe. 3 weeks isn't long enough. But I'd like the member, please, Councillor Whitbread, to explain to me how the decision was come to for that amount of reserve. It was 23 days. Well, how was that decision come to, please?
Okay,
The rest of my
thank you.
questions have been asked.
That's the end of your questions, is it, Councillor Tyrrell? That is the end of it.
Yes, the
Okay.
rest have all been asked by someone else, so that's the end of mine.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Tyrrell. Now, just to be clear, under item 6A, which is the the 151 officer report, that is a clear report, and that is a report for noting, and the recommendation under 6A is 2.1. Note the report before making recommendations to full council on the revenue budget and capital programme included within the organisation plan. So that report is for noting, so I ask members to note that report. Moving on to 6B then, the substantive item. Councillor Whitbread, clearly you've had those questions, but I would ask you to make your presentation first on the budget and then to answer those questions as appropriate. And just do remember, you're perfectly entitled to say, I'll give you a written answer if there are questions, because there are many questions there, for example. So Councillor Henderson, did you indicate you wish to ask me a question? You're muted, Councillor Henderson. You sound wonderful, but...
Sorry, Luke. Yeah, it was just on because I didn't, sorry, I missed that you were going to take them both at the same time, but both parts. But there is one question on part 2. And again, of course, we welcome the sentiment behind this, where it says on page 132, Appendix A, we will develop a new family resilience strategy, which will deepen our understanding of issues being experienced by Essex children living in poverty and disadvantage. I was just going to ask members there, why did we make a decision to close 74 children's centres? Surely this base and foundation would have been there to deal with these problems right now.
Well, there's a very strong answer to that one, which I won't give you at this point in time, but I know that either Councillor Louise McKinley or indeed Councillor Madden will give you an answer to that question. So you have noted the report and the recommendations, which are to full council on the revenue budget capital programme included within the organisational plan. Therefore, under 6A, I've asked Councillor Whitbread now to make his presentation and to answer those. Councillor McCrory.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I did indicate on the previous item I had a question on part 2. I keep putting my hand up in the chat, but I guess you'd prefer people to wave at you.
Well, I understand that, and you're perfectly at liberty and right to raise your hand. I have 59 people on screen, and it is difficult. So if you wouldn't mind just speaking up as you raise your hand, I'm sure I'll pick you up more regularly. And I'll make a great effort, Councillor McCrory, to do that. Councillor Spence.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Okay.
So, if I may then, it's on paragraph 4.2 on fees and charges, which make quite interesting reading actually for anyone who's had the inclination and the energy to get buried in the County Council's website. But I'd like some explanation for some of the increases and the justification for the car park charges in the country parks, which in some cases have gone up 17, even for blue badge holders, 17% increase, 22% increase for season tickets. Fishing permits, pastimes, outdoor recreation varies up to 20% increase. Pressing temples, 16% to 19% increase. Community weddings, 6% to 7.5% increase. These are quite significant increases, which are buried away, I would suggest. And I would like some explanation as to why they are so high when most of them refer to the outdoor activities which we're being encouraged to pursue during this pandemic. Thank you.
Okay, and again, those questions will be picked up at the completion of Councillor Whitbread's presentation. And again, I'll say it again, he is perfectly at liberty to give you a written answer to some of those questions. So, Councillor Whitbread, please.
Thank you, Leader. Leader, first of all, I'd like to thank the officer team, the finance officer team, who have been so instrumental in helping us to put this budget together. Led by Nicole Wood as Section 151 officer, they have done an exceptional piece of work. And I also thank my cabinet colleagues, because this has been a very robust process. An awful lot of work has gone in to bringing this budget forward. And given the situation that we currently find ourselves in, the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, it seems strange that I feel that this is a positive budget, and I'm very aware how challenging times are for families and businesses and the vulnerable in Essex at this time. This budget needs to support us not just through the pandemic, but beyond. It needs to support our residents into the future, our businesses as they come out of the pandemic, our opportunities to unlock the Essex economy and build jobs and opportunity for the future. This budget provides value for money for our council taxpayers, whilst ensuring we continue to deliver essential services for our residents, many of whom are vulnerable and rely on our high quality services to help them live dignified lives. This administration must strike and has struck a balance between the needs of residents, the economy and the environment, whilst raising council tax bills only by what is absolutely necessary. For 2021-22, we are recommending no increase in the Essex County Council tax element, and will be taking up just 1.5% of the social care precept that government sets as a means to fund adult social care. Every penny of that social care precept and more besides will go to funding critical services in adult social care. It is our responsibility to make sure that we help and support those people in our county who are least able to help themselves. We currently support over 16,000 adults with social care each year. Everyone has a right to live the best life they can, and this year, more than any, we have seen just how important strong communities are to our well-being. As a result of the adult social care precept, the Essex County Council element of the council tax charge for a Band D property in 21-22 will increase by 38 pence a week and will be 1,340.91. With this budget, the council is investing an additional 33 million across portfolios for 21-22. The majority of the growth going to protect and grow adult social care services, supporting some of the most vulnerable residents in Essex, and meeting the rise in demand for services, and levelling up with pay rises for carers. Council is also continuing to grow our investments into the maintenance of roads and footways, children's services and waste. The budget represents an investment in people. We know young people have been particularly hit by the economic fallout of the pandemic. As a result, we are creating 1,000 entry-level roles for young people across the county and in our own organisation. We are also creating 1,500 school places and improving support for people who have additional support needs, like from social care that is more localised, more preventative and more integrated with partners. The budget represents an ambitious investment in our economy, investing in our schools, roads and homes and into the future. In 21-22 alone, we are increasing our investment in major projects by 50%, so we can build back better than before. The budget presents a capital plan of 1.3 billion. Yes, 1.3 billion. We must build the infrastructure, school places and housing to help us grow as we come out of this pandemic. And finally, the budget represents an ongoing investment in the commitment to climate change. Planting more trees, investing in flood prevention, investing in sustainable solutions for our future. I put to members our track record of excellent financial management means that we have the foundation of budget plans that enable us to invest in the future and support Essex growth as we emerge from this current situation. We are already in the top 10 most efficient councils in the country. We already have one of the lowest council tax margins in the region. And this budget ensures we will keep Essex there whilst investing in the future. We all know there remains tough times ahead, but it's essential to set a responsible and sustainable budget that helps us the economy recover whilst ensuring we have the budget to invest and protect the most vulnerable in our community. I'd ask members, that's the end of my presentation.
You have questions that have been posed by members of the opposition. Have you answers that you wish to give to those questions, or are you expecting to give a written answer to them?
Some I will ask for written answers, Leader. Others I will try to answer now. I don't know whether Councillor Madden wants to give first.
Councillor Madden, did you wish? And I know Councillor Spence wants to come in. Councillor Madden. Councillor Madden, you might be on.
Yes. Do you want me to wait and I'll deal with my questions and the report I've got after you've taken the, or Councillor Whitworth has dealt with the budget issues?
Well, let me just first of all, you're right, we should go back to Councillor Whitworth, but Councillor Spence has indicated, so I'm going to ask Councillor Spence to come in.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Leader. I was just going to offer to answer Councillor McCrory's questions on Meaningful Lives Matter and the Connect programme when Councillor Whitred's finished answering.
Okay, well, perhaps you'd like to do those two answers now while you're on the screen, Councillor Spence. That would be
Thank you, Leader. And Councillor McCrory picked out these two programmes in the context of £46 million of savings. And what I want to share with colleagues is the importance of recognising that we have understood over the years and continue to do so now the ability to have a win-win situation. The Meaningful Lives Matter programme is all about enhancing the lives of working age adults with learning disabilities by giving them the opportunity to do things other than live in expensive shelter but non-developmental residential setting, by encouraging them to move into employment, by initiating issues like community investment companies, or community interest companies. So while there will be a financial saving, the main motivation here, Leader, is to enable those people to have better lives. And I would just remind us all that the budget for learning disabilities across this council exceeds £200 million. So an apparent large saving is actually a single figure percentage in saving. And on the Connect programme, Councillor McCrory may not remember, we have done presentations to scrutiny and to all councillors about this programme. This came through our market-leading initiation and recognising that people are leaving hospital and being discharged into settings that they did not need to go, because actually we could enable them to live independently at home, enabling them to have a better life than they would and a longer life than they would in a residential care setting, while also having that greater independence to be able to enjoy families and friends. And Leader, these are two programmes, both dedicated to doing what we have said, enabling people to live well and age well. They're entirely in line with the corporate strategies. And they do involve some savings, but the prime motivation is to age and live well. Thank you, Leader.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Spence. And Councillor Whitworth, back to you now for any of the answers that you wish to give to the questions, which are quite a large number of questions. So I do understand you may feel you wish to give written answers to them.
Yeah, Chairman, I'll do my best to work through them. I haven't got them noted in any particular order, but I'll start with most of Councillor Henderson's. First of all, with regards to your comments around the council tax being frozen this year. Councillor Henderson, I don't think freezing council tax is when you're putting up the adult social care precept by 1.5% and deferring the other 1.5%. What we've done is make a prudent decision, and we've made sure that we've invested in adult social care. And that's why people can trust this council, because actually we make sound decisions. We haven't just frozen council tax. We've thought very carefully about our spending patterns. And actually we have a record of making good, sound financial decisions. That's why we're in a strong position now. That's why we've got good reserves. And that's why, unlike when another council, this council was run by other parties, we've got a good Section 151 officer report through some of the most difficult times a council has ever gone through, probably ever gone through. Then if we go on to the issue of transparency, we couldn't be more transparent. I think if you go through the records of this and you look at the quality impact assessment report, which sets out the savings by portfolios, this council is an open and transparent council, and our finances are open and transparent, as you can see from any audit report that you'd like to question. In fact, I've probably been to scrutiny more than any finance portfolio holder in recent years to explain what we're doing as a council, whether it be on reserves or whether it be in regards to the pandemic and our recovery process. This is a council that's worked really hard for the residents of Essex throughout the pandemic and beyond and before. With regards to some of the other comments, I was quite surprised by Councillor Young's comments around council tax, because her own national party leader was busy in the House of Commons saying he supported a council tax freeze. There should be no council tax increases. But what we have to do is come up with sound policies for the local area and do the right thing by Essex. Connecting communities, I will leave that to one of my other colleagues to answer, probably Councillor McKinley, because she's done more than anyone to help connect some of our most vulnerable communities, particularly in recent times. Councillor McCrory and fees and charges, our fees and charges policy is clearly set out, and we always increase our fees and charges by normally by inflation, unless there are other reasons for doing that. But Councillor Walsh may like to comment on the country parks. But again, if we don't bring income in, and actually one of the comments around some of us is we are heavily leveraged on our council tax income compared to some councils. But you have to have income from fees and charges. Otherwise, how do you provide services? So I'm sure Councillor Walsh might like to make a more detailed response, probably in writing around country parks. Lobbying government. We've done more to lobby government than anyone else. In fact, if you look at some of the support around council tax that's coming in the financial statement, that we were the first through the front door of government lobbying to do something to support us on council tax collection. And we managed to achieve that. When it comes down to a whole range of issues on a regular basis, cabinet members are lobbying both local MPs and ministers to make sure Essex is heard at the highest levels to get things done for Essex. And there are a number of examples where our lobbying has paid off in the past year. These are dark days, I accept that, Councillor Young, but in dark days you have to be pragmatic and move forward, and you have to work exceptionally hard to do the right thing for local people. And you can see that from all the efforts that have been done through adult social care, children's services. We've got a record to be proud of, and we should take great strength in that as a county. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions I can answer immediately, or whether or not we will need to come back on them. There were some comments around the capital strategy. Yes, the capital strategy is probably one of the most bold capital strategies a council has ever had. But then we want to deliver on that infrastructure that Essex needs. We want to deliver on those 1,500 school places. We want to make sure that projects go ahead. And that means that you have to have a bold capital strategy. And I think one of the comments was that we used the word indicative in our capital strategy. Well, I know all the members on this screen today read our budgets with interest every year, and they will see the word indicative in every capital strategy over the years, because actually timings of different projects change as you move along. And that's why you say indicative. But we have got a good record on our capital strategy. And whilst this one is bold, it's affordable at the same time. Leader, I think I've answered most of the questions, but I'm happy to make sure we go back in writing to any I've missed.
I'm just going to ask Councillor Walsh perhaps if he would like to respond. I see your hand up, Councillor Walsh, so
yeah.
Answer if you wish.
Thank you, Leader. Well, clearly the fees and charges are an important part of the budget of the country parks, and they have been recently benchmarked, and so they're more reflective of market rates across the industry, if you like. So I'm very happy to provide a more detailed response, but with all the extra use, we've had over 1 million visits to the country parks this year. It's more wear and tear, and more fabric needs repair, and we need to build up our revenue budget to enable that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Walsh. And so there are no other questions that need to be answered. Councillor Madden, did you wish to comment at all on the
just
plan, please?
Just before I do that, there is Councillor McKinley has been waving at you, Leader.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor McKinley. I do apologise. So, Councillor McKinley.
No problem, thank you. I just wanted to respond to Councillor Henderson's question around the family resilience strategy, and I can obviously provide more detail outside of this if necessary. I think the reason for the closure of the children's centres is well rehearsed. We all know, it's been said a number of times, how the most vulnerable of families were not accessing the support that they were both entitled to and needed through those arrangements. And since they've been closed, having a much more of an outreach and targeted support network has certainly proved dividends in terms of enabling us to access those people who need it the most. But I would actually take this opportunity just to make the point that this strategy goes far beyond just looking at children's centres. We know we're seeing it very acutely now through the pandemic, just what poverty and access to services, what that can look like, how important it is that we can support our most vulnerable people to ensure that across the ages that people can make the very best of their lives. So the Working Families Programme, which is currently going through its latest iteration in terms of looking at what support could be put in place in the community around childcare, we are looking at how we can link that in with welfare work, COVID needs, poverty, to try and get a much better understanding and develop a full strategy of support for vulnerable families across Essex. So this is much, much more than just a children's centre. If it was that easy, quite frankly, it would have been done and there'd be no need for this programme now. And there very much is. So we're looking through that strategy to see what else we can do. And I would also just say, in terms of connecting communities, you've all seen the emails, I'm sure, that I've sent out over the last few weeks about free school meal vouchers, if it's about support for food banks and food distribution groups, money for Home Start, the laptop scheme, which is supporting schools to try and get laptops into the homes of our most vulnerable families across the county, support for dependency groups, additional funding for mental health, essential living fund, the list goes on and on. Once in a lifetime situation here, a global pandemic, and I'm certainly really proud as to how we are responding as a council. So there's lots there that we are doing, and there will be much more to come. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor McKinley. I do apologise for missing you, but there are 59 people on here, and it's sometimes very difficult when you're trying to do the agenda as well as see the raised hands. But I'm pleased that you're all being diligent and reminding me as you need to speak. So that's great. So thank you for that. So thank you very much indeed. Councillor Madden, did you now wish to speak?
Just very briefly, Leader, in relation to the organisational plan. So following on from the Section 151 report, and in conjunction with my Cabinet colleague, Councillor Whitbread, I would like to put forward the organisational plan for approval. I first of all would like to say thank you to many officers who've been engaged in this, Cabinet colleagues, CLT, obviously other partnerships and residents as well. I won't dwell on our response to COVID-19 pandemic, as this is detailed in the organisational plan, but I will say that this council recognises the pressures that residents have been under and will continue to be under perhaps for some time, which is why our organisational plan for 21-22 keeps our focus on our residents, expanding support to get people into employment, access to learning and access to support for their well-being as we respond to and then recover. Our three key strategic objectives are securing inclusive economic growth, helping people get the best start and age, helping to create great places and transforming the council. As you can read, as you've all read in the organisation plan, we have delivered against these key strategic objectives despite the challenges 2020 has thrown at us. And we will continue to do so, and the highlights I've picked out of the report today just show that. We will develop programmes of work to support people into sectors where there is a capacity, deliver 500 apprenticeships and create new online job making services. We will continue to develop and deliver economic support to business across Essex and support remote working through the delivering of a digital connectivity strategy. We would continue to deliver a huge capital programme through Essex Housing in key town centres, localities to support localised economic growth in communities. We will develop and continue our holiday hunger programme to support some of the most vulnerable children and extend the holiday activity offer across each of the school holidays. We are continuing to invest in greener and more sustainable infrastructure, and we will be responding to the Essex Climate Action Commission shortly. We shall also continue of delivery of the Essex Forest Initiative, develop a electrification strategy and look at what we can do to make our estate greener. We will continue to invest in homes, investment in infrastructure and work with partners to develop healthy places for people to live, work and thrive. We will continue to develop our use of data, and we will continue to use our power along with that of our public sector partners to support Essex businesses through anchor partnership work. We want to tackle ongoing inequality across the county, working with families, schools and our faith groups to develop new ways of working to support those people who need our support. So, Leader, to bring my report to a conclusion, these are just some highlights on what is an extensive organisational plan which shows our investment in our communities across Essex, and I commend this report and its recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Madden. Now we've had the conversation, we've had the presentation, we've had some of the answers to the questions and the follow-up. There will be follow-up answers given, obviously. So there are significant recommendations within the paper, so you will forgive me, I'll take them one at a time. So the first one is the organisation under recommendations and decision areas. Organisation and plan and revenue budget. Cabinet is asked to make the following recommendations to full council. 2.1 through to 2.9 within the paper. Is that agreed? That's the first step. That's agreed. Show of hands, please. The second one is Cabinet are asked to agree the following, which is in 2.10 through to 2.11. Is that agreed? Hands, please. And third one is the capital strategy. Cabinet are requested to make the following recommendations to full council. 2.12 through to 2.20. 220 is the total, I think, there. And indeed, that concludes, I think, the papers, unless I've missed something. Those recommendations have been moved and accepted by the Cabinet. So thank you very much for your help in that regard. We now move on from this item 6 to item 7. And again, this is about the third quarter report. And again, I would ask if there are any questions from members of the opposition party. So I have Councillor McCrory and I have Councillor McCrory and Councillor Henderson. And I'll take them in that order, please. Councillor McCrory and then Henderson, please.
Yes, thank you very much. First question on paragraph 3.5, which is about the reduction in the council tax collection fund of 8 million. So as I mentioned on the previous report about the uncertainty around this for this coming year, so is there any certainty that this facility for spreading it over the next 3 years, will that apply to this current budget as well? I'd be interested to know the answer to that one. 5.1 is the next paragraph I'm interested in, if I can just scroll down, bear with me.
Councillor Young. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 5.1 Roman 3. Just as a matter of interest, I've not seen this referred to before. Carry forward reserve due to the unbudgeted asylum income. I'd be interested to know what that's about, please. 5.5 Roman 2. Yes, I find this quite surprising. The anticipated growth has not materialised. My experience of working with parents and with schools on applying for these schemes has been that it's you have a devil's own job to try and get them, and there's a backlog, and it's a real fight for parents to get this, and yet we're saying that the demand has not materialised. I'd be very interested to have an explanation of that.
Okay.
And finally, 7.5. Continue to scroll down. 7.5. Oh yes, the Roman 1. The not to proceed with the storage area network. I'll be interested to, maybe not now, but a written response. I'd be interested to hear what the thinking was about that, because it was my understanding that that was a very important requirement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now go to Councillor Henderson and Councillor Young.
She doesn't mind staying with me.
Thank you.
Sorry, I missed.
Thank you, Leader.
Such interference coming from.
And can I take this opportunity while I'm speaking now to also thank finance officers, because they are now supporting my group. We've got 2 or 3 meetings going ahead to actually go through the budget in detail and look for some answers that we're obviously looking for. On this item, one of the finance officers has already agreed to look at it for me. But just worth mentioning on page 257, 3.1, funding 798,000 loss of income due to the business rates bill not achieving the budget forecast. I've asked if we could have a look at how much of this is due to, sadly, the loss possibly of businesses within Essex. It would really be good to see a picture of if there are businesses which have failed because of the pandemic and the type of businesses that have failed as well. I think that would be useful for us to have a good picture and an idea of that. On page 272, 9.2, it says there, close highways reserve 5.5 million and move to service improvement reserve. And it also says on page 269, 7.6, highways maintenance underspend of £986,000. I'd like to ask a question when many of us probably sitting here today can see roads, surfaces that need doing and potholes that need fixing. I know in my area, particularly in my division, I've got 2, possibly 3 road surfaces which have now failed, and the chippings of that road surface are all over the paths and in the guttering. I've got potholes which have been filled before.
Councillor Henderson, I understand the question. The narrative that's going with it, I don't think is necessary. The question you put needs.
Why hasn't the money been spent? Why hasn't the money been spent on those roads repairs?
Thank you. And then I move on. Is that the last one, Councillor Henderson?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Leader. Mine is on the slippage on page 278, Appendix C. So it's slippage on highway maintenance. Obviously, I understand we've had the most difficult year in our history, but I'm concerned to see slippage on that highway maintenance budget. And forgive me, I just want 13,000 to paint a wall in my division, and nobody says they haven't got any money. So Kevin, please help me to paint a wall. If you've got some money left over, I need my wall painted. Only 13,000.
Could you please say, is that your lounge or is it your outside wall?
It's the gateway to Colchester on
okay.
Avon Way, St Andrews Avenue Junction.
I'm sure Councillor Bentley will be mindful of your request in that regard. Right, thank you very much. Is that the only question then, Councillor Young? Yes, it seems to be. Okay. So, Councillor Whitbread, those are the questions to you. You may defer some of them to, for example, to Cabinet members. There are obviously a couple of questions there that Councillor Bentley, who's the Deputy Leader, and also the Cabinet Member for Infrastructure, may wish to answer as well. But I'll go to you first, Councillor Whitbread.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yes, so all really good questions and much appreciated, and it helps to clarify where we are on a number of issues. So first of all, with regards to the council tax deficit, obviously that's already taken into account in the 21-22 budget, and we are using obviously the 3-year deferral that government has given us the option to do. With regards to the issue on asylum, the asylum reserve, asylum seekers reserve, I understand that the income, the government increased the grant funding allocations after the 2021 budget setting, and that's why it's where it is. With regards to SEN, I'm probably better to pass to Councillor Gooding for an answer on that. He may wish to give a written response, but I'm sure he's better to give that answer, Leader.
Councillor Gooding, do you wish to answer that question now? Councillor Gooding.
Thank you. Apologies, I was struggling to get unmuted. Yes, I mean, the issue of the provision of education healthcare plans is an ongoing matter, and one that we need to manage and control quite carefully, obviously for the benefit of the children who have got additional needs, but also the ability to provide the services that those children need. So I would suspect it may be better for me to go into a greater amount of detail in writing than I could probably outline here. So we'll certainly perhaps have separate conversation with Councillor McCrory in regards to that, so that we can align the details of what he wants with the answer that I need to give him.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Gooding. I have McKinley wanted to come in, I think. So, Councillor McKinley.
Thank you, Leader. It's okay because Councillor Whitbread has answered the piece on the asylum grant. I was just going to update on that, so he's answered it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you very much. Okay, so then we had a question with regards to the business rates and obviously the worries that we have around, is that because businesses are closing? We expect in the 21-22 budget there's a 2% reduction in rates take, but we will need to get more data from districts to actually get a more precise detail on businesses. And of course, it's of great concern to us. So obviously, Councillor Henderson, as that research is done, we will be as equally interested as yourself, and something that we're keeping a close eye on. And of course, the council's putting in place a number of strategies to support businesses, particularly using the money supplied by government through comp funding as well. So we're doing all we can. With regards to highways, don't worry, the 5 million, Councillor Bentley wants to come in here, so I shall pass over to him.
Councillor Bentley.
Well, I was going to talk mostly about the maintenance, and Councillor Whitbread may want to come back on a couple of your wishes. And I think it's very important that we all understand exactly what's going on. And I absolutely applaud what Councillor Young said about us going through a terrible period. I think she should have a word with her leader about that, because given his comments on this and the budget, you wouldn't think he understood completely. It's a slippage, it's no more than that. And I will have to say to you that our workers, our highways maintenance teams, the guys who fix the roads throughout this pandemic, who go out at night time when we're all asleep gritting roads, are not immune to this virus. They are also key workers, of which I'm immensely proud of. I know every single councillor on this call and this authority is proud of as well. You just don't see them, and therefore they're sometimes forgotten. Not by me, I have to say, and not by the cabinet or the administration, they've forgotten either. And therefore this slippage is precisely that. Money sits in the highways is not there just not to be spent, it will be spent on some of these roads. We have gone through some of the worst weather, some of the worst rain we have seen in recent times. We think back to last week, 3 days of solid rain. Not only does that block the drains and cause flooding, and we had crews out right throughout the weekend and right into late in the evening. The guys who then go back and climb in those gritter lorries to try and get rid of some of that flooding. But drains can't cope with that kind of rain that's coming. That's all wrapped up in climate change as well. We shouldn't forget that. So every action we take to improve climate change, we should. And as we know, this administration is doing great things under Councillor Walsh and the Commission to make sure that happens as well. So this money spent is just a question of a moment in time when you look at these reports. And you know our crews are out all the time. We had the 50 member-led pothole schemes. That is being worked on. Every week you get a list of that. Councillor Henderson, if you have extra potholes, report them in the right way. And they absolutely are as bad as you're saying, they will be fixed. Painting a wall, Councillor, I don't know what the wall is. You'll have to, I think I can think of it because I'm local as well. But you have to tell me why it's being painted. It's the first I've heard of it. Fixing the roads, though, is a top priority. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bentley. Back to you, Councillor Whitbread.
Yeah, thank you. And obviously, thank you very much. On the highways capital, the £5 million was put into a reserve while we waited for the government to give us the £5 million. But it can now go back to where it was in the first place. So yes, that £5 million has been spent on potholes, and it's come courtesy of the government. We have, I think I've almost covered everything. We had the storage area network. So we didn't purchase the storage area network, but we extended the warranty. We appraised our original plan of the network, and it was determined it wasn't a good long-term investment. So again, we're making the right decisions for Essex and when it comes to investments. I think that's covered most of the questions, Leader. If not, we will again pick them up in writing if I've missed anything.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Whitbread. I see no other questions. Now I will move the recommendations that are in the paper. You have recommendation 2.1, Roman 1 through to 9. You have recommendation 2, which is Roman 1 through to 6, Roman 6. You have recommendation 2.3, Roman 1 through to Roman 13 is what I have here. So those are the recommendations within the paper, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 with the sub-index of Roman numbers. So are they agreed? Raise your hands, please, if they're agreed. Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to an item which is not a financial item. This is an item now which I believe falls to Councillor Louise McKinley. This is the semi-independent accommodation and support, the decision to recommission a framework from October 2021. Are there any questions for Councillor McKinley? I see Councillor Henderson. Councillor Spence, you wish to ask a question, or
sorry,
Councillor Henderson?
Yeah, just a brief one, Leader. It's on page 2 to 8 on risks. It says regular, because of the issue about the quality of the care and the accommodation. It says regular monitoring by children and young people's placement service. I just wondered what, because to look at the quality and the facilities and the care of those children. I just wondered what regular actually means and what type of monitoring that refers to. Is it just a monitoring as stated in the report where young people, children have been surveyed, or are there face-to-face and literal visits to those facilities to make regular monitoring and checks done? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I see no other member indicating. No, so Councillor McKinley, to you, please.
Thank you. So visits are made to each establishment at least twice a year. I can offline provide you with some more information around all the additional support that's put in place in terms of ensuring quality there. So this item, you'll see from the report, the current arrangements are due to expire in October this year. The current arrangements cover off 3 cohorts, and the proposal is to add a 4th. So the 16 and 17-year-olds, the unaccompanied asylum seekers, the families with no recourse to public funds, and the new one being the 16 and 17-year-olds with complex needs. This is something that we are seeing emerge more and more, and therefore to have a separate approach to them we think will be beneficial. Obviously about accommodation and supported placements. It is an unregulated provision, as members will be aware, because of the age of the families that we are dealing with here. But I will just add that there is currently a consultation that's going on with government around whether these should be Ofsted or CQC regulated. But as has just been alluded to by Councillor Henderson, there is nevertheless other protections in place to make sure, obviously, in terms of the quality of the establishments themselves, and also making sure that they meet the needs of the families that are placed in each of the accommodations. Other than that, option 1 recommends the 4 lots for the reasons that I've outlined, and I just commend the report and the proposals to you. Thank you.
So, Councillor McKinley, you're moving the recommendations under 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, is that correct?
Yes, please.
And then members, those have been moved, then seconded, and can they be approved, please? Hands, please. Thank you very much. I see. Thank you very much. And then I move on to the next item, which is the item recommissioning of the emotional wellbeing and mental health service for children and young people. This is a report by Councillor Spence. Councillor Spence, do you wish to talk to this paper?
Shall I take questions first, Leader?
Yes, of course. And I have Councillor Henderson and again Councillor McCrory. So in that order, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCrory.
Thank you, Leader. And on page 302, it talks about a system to ensure that children and families receive the right support at the right time and in the best way. Just a matter of interest, I looked through the report and I couldn't see the timescales of people what exists at the moment from assessment to treatment. I know there's been long delays in the past. I just wondered how much they've improved and what is the amount of time now which exists between assessment and counselling or treatment. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor McCrory.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, 6.1 financial implications. There's a figure there of 14.2 million, which is of which exits contribute 1.942 per annum. I just want some assurance here that
Councillor McCrory, you've muted yourself or someone's muted you, but it wasn't me.
6.1 financial implications. The figure there, 14.2 million, of which 1.942 is from ECC. I just want some assurance that given the known demand and the known backlog and the anticipated increased demand, whether can we have some real assurance here that this is going to be sufficient given current circumstances that we're in and the increased demands. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Spence.
Thank you, Leader, and thanks, Councillor Henderson McCrory, for the questions. Councillor Henderson, it's a very fair question. And I can report that we had been seeing an improved time period in terms of the excess periods. I did report to the Scrutiny Committee only last week on the situation here. Sadly, those times have deteriorated during COVID lockdown because of all the reasons we can understand. I'm very happy that we'll share with you the data that we shared with Scrutiny Committee, and clearly there's more work to be done. They're very difficult numbers to interpret because I always look at them later and think, gosh, that's a long time. But there are many reasons why there is quite a gap between that initial assessment. But it is certainly true that we've got some recovery to do. Which brings me to Councillor McCrory's very fair question. But can I remind Councillor McCrory, firstly, that this is for procurement in 2022, and the backlog will need to be tackled in 2021. And secondly, that I have never believed that a budget is some sort of rod of iron. If the demand is there, then we will need to meet the demand. There is no question that if we have to go over budget, as we saw in some aspects of the Q3 report, Leader, if we have to go over budget, we will go over budget in order to provide the service that is required. I would like to note, Leader, this is one contract where we can go to re-procurement with some very significant progress having been made, with it being recognised by the regulars that the partnership between ourselves, Southend, Thurrock and the Health Service is one of the best models that we have seen, and that we can record significant progress. So I'm very happy to move recommendations 2.1. There is a typo, Leader, 2.1, 2.3 it should be.
Yes, correct, Councillor Spence. The recommendations are 2.1, 2.2, 2.2 and sub of 2.2 is 2.2.1, 2.2.2, 2.2.3. Are those recommendations agreed? Please signify your agreement. Okay, I see a show of hands, so that is approved. So we now move on to the next item of business, which will be, I think, if I can find my piece of paper, which will be
item 11.
Item 11, and item 11 is, I believe, decisions taken in conjunction.
No, residual waste, Chairman.
I beg your pardon. Sorry for the confusion there. You're absolutely right. I have the papers, and this one is for Councillor Gooding, I believe. I'm just checking the papers. The one I have is the extension of the travel contract extensions and award. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, I think.
Apologies, Chairman.
Thank you. So, first of all, Councillor Gooding, you had a question from a member of the public. You were going to provide the written answer in the context of this presentation and this report.
Well, yes, if I could just remind members that the question was from Nicola Granger from CPT, who asked about whether we could extend all of the existing contracts. And in relation to that, and the reason I asked the delay was that I suspect there may be similar questions from members present, is that the consideration was that would be inappropriate because of the current 186 contracts that we have for provision of this service. 51 of them are either time expired, contractually very difficult to extend, and would probably be inappropriate on those grounds. And one of the main reasons that I think we would want to make sure that we could do this is that we work very closely with the sector and the providers of these services, and to extend it by a year would be in those circumstances quite difficult, because there would be something of a cliff edge at the end. So my response to Nicola Grainer is that we will continue to work with the sector and to continue to make sure that there is a sustainable travel industry and bus companies in the county, because they're obviously for the benefit of everybody. So that will be ongoing work that is done.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions? I neglected to ask if there are any questions. So, Councillor McCrory, I have you up. So please. Councillor McCrory, you're muted.
Thank you, thank you. This is a subject which I've mentioned in the past and previous similar reports, and it's a general one to the portfolio holder. I don't see within the report any reference to require the operators who run these buses that they are, shall we say, energy efficient, eco-friendly, and they're not the rather elderly vehicles that we see belching out diesel fumes outside schools and on their journeys backwards and forwards. Is there any reference within the contract for those requirements, please?
I think.
Thank you, Councillor Gooding.
If I may, and I think we all obviously want to get as efficient as possible services and the most up-to-date vehicles on these services, but that is something that we work on continually with the operators. I think that given that this is a matter of extending contracts because of the COVID situation that we're in at the moment, that existing work will continue. But I think that we need to ensure, and particularly where we are re-tendering and re-procuring, it does give us new opportunity to make sure that within that tender process, those sorts of energy efficiency requirements are embedded within them. I think it's inevitably going to be an iterative process to get to where we want to be, if that's not a bad pun in regards to passenger transport. But the intention is there, and I think the re-tendering process is part of that programme. So that's something that we'll have to look at, and I can report back on as we move forward on that. But if that answers the questions, hopefully everybody's read the paper and the details. I would ask for support for the recommendations 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3.
So the recommendations, councillors, have been moved. Are they agreed? They are agreed. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Gooding, for that. And I then move on to the next item, which is the award of residual waste service orders. I will for the moment just hold Councillor Walsh. I'm sure, yes, I've got Councillor McCrory. I see nobody else indicating. Councillor McCrory then.
Yes,
you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'd be interested to hear from the Cabinet member if you can confirm what the actual method of disposal is for lots 1 to 4. Are we talking about landfill for all of these? And also where lot 5, where there were no bids, what's the implication of that, please? Thank you.
Okay, but any other questions? No, I see no one else indicating. Councillor Walsh, the questions are for you and you to move to speak to the report, please.
Yeah, right, I'm unmuted. Good. Thank you, Councillor McCrory. Lots 1 to 4, for the most part, will be landfill, and the lot 5 really has no implications because the other lots supply transport in any case. If I have made an error in my response, no doubt we can get a written answer to you to amend that, but from memory that seems to be the case. So members, we have before us a report which is to look to disposal of residual waste. This is to last for 18 months from the beginning of April, as our present arrangements, our service orders end at the end of March this year. You see from the paper the lots awarded, and I'll ask members to agree the recommendation under 2.1.
Members, Councillor Walsh has moved the recommendations 2.1. Can I have a show of hands, please, that that's agreed? Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Walsh, for your report. That brings me to item 12, which is the decisions taken by or in consultation with Cabinet members on pages 322 to 324. Councillor Henderson, you're muted. Sounds good to me, but you're muted.
Thank you, Leader. Can I first of all, before I just ask this item, as long as every crossing it in my division, just make it clear I believe those who have been delivering a public service have been amazing to the people, whatever industry, whatever voluntary sector they've been in. It's been an absolute fantastic service, and we will never find the words to thank them enough. So I was not aiming any criticism to our highways engineers. I was talking about the criteria for the repairs and the quality of the material that's being used. Obviously, is not working. Leader, can I just say, mention, and I thank Councillor Bentley for this, just passing and making a decision to put a zebra crossing in a road which has been a long-standing, a real worry to both the school and parents within my ward, which is Parkston Road. I'm really pleased that that's now going ahead. Having spoken to highways officers before, they've said the best time to put these crossings in is at a time when the schools are closed, possibly during holiday periods. I just wonder, is there an opportunity where these crossings may be planned to go in, that we could bring them forward while the schools are closed to actually put them in at this time? There's another problem with the one at the school that this crossing served, and that's we've just lost the school crossing patrol attendant as well, and they're finding it hard to get anyone else. So I just wondered if this could be done before the school goes back. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Bentley, do you wish to respond to that question?
Yes, thank you, Leader. First, I will say thank you for those kind words, Councillor Henderson. I think that's good to hear, and I know that many of the people who work on highways are listening to this cabinet meeting, which is why I made the intervention that I did, and I think they will welcome your words, and thank you very much indeed for that as well. So I think the best thing, Councillor Henderson, is if you write to me specifically. Of course, there's every time you take an action, there's a consequence. So for doing that, we'll have to stop doing something else. That's not to say we can't do it, and I absolutely appreciate schools are not there at the moment, not functioning. Some are, because obviously some children are going to schools for key workers. If we can, we will. And if you send the details, I will look at that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bentley.
Leader, can I just come back? Councillor Bentley, you have been copied in on various emails from the head teacher, myself, and officers on this particular crossing. You'll be able to find them. Councillor Gooden knows as well.
Councillor Henderson, I understand your questions and the reasons for them, but these are specific questions that should be asked around those decisions that have been taken. They should not venture off that particular subject. And I can see you smiling, and so thank you very much for the questions. I'm going to move us on now to item 13, which is the date of the next meeting, which will be online at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 16th of February, 2021. Having said that, I then move on to item 14, urgent business. I have not had any notification of any urgent business, and therefore there will not be any urgent business. I move then to make the statement in terms of exempt items. The following items of business have not been published on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure exempt information falling within Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Members are asked to consider whether or not the press and public should be excluded during the consideration of these items. If so, it will be necessary for the meeting to pass a formal resolution. This formal resolution I will read out, and then I will ask members to second the resolution. That the press and public are excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the remaining items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure exempt information falling within Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, the specific paragraph or paragraphs of Schedule 12A engaged being set out in the report or appendix relating to that item of business. Can I be assured through my democratic officer